Tracie here. Have you heard about the Guy Girls Patreon? In November 2025, we rolled out all new tiers and benefits, including Zoom Hangouts with your favorite sister podcasters, bonus content, group chats, and discount on merch. You guys, we have merch! So head on over to the link in your show notes. We want to hang out with you. Until soon. Because the reality is that you don't move on. You don't get over it. You just get on with your life eventually. You do eventually get out of the footprint and start walking toward the Great Valley, but like you're still thinking about the deceased all the time. You carry it with you. Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit. I'm Tracie Guy Decker, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I'll be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1988 animated film from Don Bluth, Land Before Time, with my sister, Emily Guy Birken, and with you. Let's dive in. Okay, I don't think this was one of ours because we were kind of too old for it when it came out. I watched it many times when I was babysitting in grad school, which was my primary job, aside from being a student, while I was in graduate school. But what's in your head about Land Before Time?
So I do remember it. I remember the main character's name was Littlefoot. I remember liking that as a name.
That's right.
And I remember there was a leaf that his mother had given him and that he carried it around. And I remember there was a point at which, because he was an herbivore, where it was like, eat the leaf, because he was hungry. And I remember the animation being beautiful. And that's all I got. That's about it. Recently, someone said to me, and I wish I could remember the context where the conversation was, because I was talking about how I look at a lot of film and media that I consumed and recognizing like how it was neurodivergent friendly without realizing it. And someone said, oh yeah, I feel that way about The Land Before Time now that you mention it, because there's a character who might be coded as a neurodivergent. And I thought that was a really interesting comment, but my memory of this film was so spotty that I had no clue as to who that character would be. So that I found really interesting. But that's it. That's all I got. So why are we talking about this film today?
So listeners, we have a list of like 100 plus pieces of media that are like on the possible list. And like every 6 to 8 weeks, we sit down and we figure out what we're going to do for the next set of episodes. And for whatever reason, this one jumped out right now. I don't actually have a good reason for why I'm doing it right now. In fact, as I was prepping, I was like, I should have done the American Tail if I was going to do Don Bluth. I should have done American Tail first, which I'll come back to American Tail. But so I don't know why right now, except that for whatever reason, it jumped out at me when we were looking at the list of and thinking about what to do. As I mentioned, I saw this movie a lot as a young adult, 25-ish, when I was babysitting for some kids. I was like a regular babysitter in graduate school for kids who are now grown-ass adults, which freaks me out a little bit. But this was one of their favorites. And so we watched it a lot. And I just had this in my memory, like hand-drawn animation, like in a moment in our culture when animation was kind of at a low point, like starting to come back in the late 80s and early 90s, but really not what it is today for sure. And I just remember really enjoying it and feeling like it was a more nuanced and interesting movie. And so that's why I put it on the list. I'm not sure it lived up to my memory in rewatch, but let me give you a couple of postcards from the destination. It's a very short film. It's only 66 minutes of running time.
Really?
So it almost felt like a TV show.
Wow.
Yeah. It's only 66 minutes. But some of the things that I think are interesting that I want to bring forward are this movie, especially for a children's movie, does a very nuanced job of portraying grief. And I think it gives some really useful lessons to the children watching about grief and about the person who is lost and how they're still with you in some sense through your memory and through your love, which I think is really nice. There's some well-meaning work to try and like combat discrimination that doesn't quite live up to, I think, what the movie makers were hoping for. there's also, I have that sort of nuanced picture of grief. And I want to contrast that with the lesson of a very happily ever after at the end of this movie, which feels totally disingenuous about a movie about dinosaurs. Just like that, fundamentally.
There is something a little odd.
Yeah.
I feel that way sometimes reading historical, like the happily ever after. I'm like, but they're all dead now. It's set in 1850. Yeah. They're all dead now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about storytelling because this is a found family narrative. And so we get tropes, like each of the members of the found family of this found tribe kind of has a trope. And maybe we can get to your acquaintance or friend who said there was maybe a neurodivergent coded one. And it does and doesn't hold up with these 5 dinosaurs. And so I want to talk about the ways that it does and doesn't. And also the storytelling of it. There are ways in which it felt like the movie makers kind of underestimated their viewers. So that's some postcards from the destination. Let me catch you up on the plot of this thing, which for once I think maybe I can be shorter than the actual runtime of the movie.
It might be equivalent this time.
Maybe. I'll do my best. I sort of think somebody was like, hey, let's make Bambi, but with dinosaurs. And that was like the pitch meeting. So we meet Littlefoot, as you remember, who is the dinosaur that's not a brontosaurus because that doesn't exist anymore. He's an apatosaurus.
Does now exist again.
Okay, I can't keep up. So anyway, in the movie, they call themselves and everyone else calls them long necks. So fine, he's a long neck. And the narrator lets us know that like the only long necks left in their tribe is this newly hatched Littlefoot and his mom and his grandma and grandpa. So how mom had him remains a question, but I don't know how long long necks gestate their eggs. So maybe dad died. I don't know. Anyway, Littlefoot hatches and he's all the hopes and dreams of his tiny little tribe. And we learn that they are trying to make their way to the Great Valley because the weather is changing and shit is changing and like all of the food that they eat is dying. In voiceover, we learn that there are 2 kinds of dinosaurs. There are plant eaters and there are meat eaters. So Littlefoot, obviously a plant eater. And we meet several other plant eaters. Here's where the sort of well-meaning thing about discrimination happens. Littlefoot, while they're walking, and they walk as far as they possibly can every single day. And at some point, Littlefoot ends up kind of playing with a baby triceratops called Sarah, C-E-R-A. For all the time I watched this, I thought it was S-A-R-A-H. So, but it's not. It's C-E-R-A because she's a triceratops. And they start playing and they're having fun, but then the daddy triceratops like stands between like his giant foot between the 2 baby dinosaurs and says, 3 horns don't play with long necks. Okay, fine. So terrible things happen. It's like a big earthquake and like like huge new mountains and chasms and stuff. And Littlefoot is separated from his grandparents. Oh, and meanwhile, I totally skipped. There was a Sharptooth, a T-Rex, who heard Sarah and Littlefoot playing. They started playing again despite the injunction from the daddy triceratops. And the T-Rex tries to eat them. Mama Longneck intervenes and saves them, but she ends up getting bitten several times. And then after she's been bitten, this huge earthquake with like chasms opening up, she takes a big fall. Littlefoot is separated from his grandparents. Sarah is separated from her parents. Littlefoot finds his mom. She's like laying down. He's, you got to get up. You got to get up. She says, I don't know if I can. She gets up. She falls again. She dies. Her last words to him are, remember how to get to the Great Valley. And they're like specific landmarks. You have to go past the rock that looks like a long neck, go past the mountains that breathe fire, and you'll find the Great Valley. Great Valley is a mythic place where there's all the food you can eat, and there's water, and there's everything. It's just Valhalla. And that's where they were walking towards. She's never been there. Mama has never been there. She's told us that. But she believes that it's there because sometimes some things you can see with your heart. Some things you see with your eyes and some things you see with your heart. And she sees that the Great Valley is in fact there with her heart. So those are the last words to Littlefoot. This baby is devastated. And this is where I say, like, I think the grief is really well done. Like, he curls up in her footprint and is like too upset to do anything. Eventually, what gets him going again is he remembers her instruction. And so he keeps going. He gets up and starts walking. Along the way, he collects a little band of baby dinosaurs who have all been separated. Before Mom died, while they were walking, they said there were going to be plenty of green food to eat in the Great Valley. And as they're walking, they see a tree and there's one leaf left on it. And she says, oh, it's a tree star. That's what she calls the leaf because it's got 5 points or whatever. It's like an oak as opposed to an almond-shaped one. And she says there's so many of these in the Great Valley that we'll be able to feast on them. But she pulls it down and gives it to him. So he's been carrying it the whole way. And he had sort of lost it with the death and the everything. But kind of that's part of also the like, Mom is still with him. Like he hears her voice and then he is reunited with the tree star, which ends up getting rolled and he's carrying it. Anyway, so along the way, on the way to the Great Valley, trying to find the way, he's supposed to follow the Great Circle, which is the sun, past the rock and the mountains and the whatever. So he picks up a little band of other dinosaurs. First he meets Ducky, who is a little amphibious dinosaur who they're the one, I actually don't know what gender they're supposed to be. They're the one who the kids I babysat for love the most because they respond to things. They always say like, yep, yep, yep.
I remember that.
And it's like super cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Ducky who's very like cheerful. And then we see sadness in moments where no one's paying attention from Ducky. But they're the ones who they say, yep, yep, yep. And nope, nope, nope. And they're just really adorable. Then they meet Petrie, who is a pterodon who's terrified of flying and has a very odd verbal affect as well. Like Petrie falls out of a tree and he's like, I flied? And they're like, no, you fell. You falled. And he has this weird sort of like almost accented English. Eventually, Ducky finds a egg that's snoring and helps it hatch. And this is Spike. He's a Stegosaurus. Ducky names him because he's a spike tail. That's the kind of dinosaur he is. They name him Spike. And he does not speak, like at all. And it's possible he's the one that your friend thinks is neurodivergent coded. Maybe. Like, I think in 1988, he was just what we would have called slow back then. He almost reads like, you know how Goofy's a dog and Pluto's a dog, but like, Goofy's a human dog and Pluto's a dog.
Okay.
It's kind of like that, where the other dinosaurs are like people dinosaurs.
Okay.
Spike's a dinosaur.
Okay.
Like he's more like an animal. That's the way it sort of reads. And then Sarah. So those are the dinosaurs and they're making their way and there's fights between them and they have conflict and they're trying to find food and they like fall down hills. And along the way, there are moments of what I want to call like magic or like mystical, like I would almost call them like divine encounters that Littlefoot has that are not with God, but with his dead mom, where she leads him in one way or another. But we see sort of like light shining down from above and like the music is, and it like, we know that something magical is happening. It's always the mom. It happens several times throughout.
It's like Inigo Montoya, guide my sword, father. Yeah.
Yes. Kind of like that, except rather than Littlefoot saying, Mom, help, there's more of a proactiveness from the spirit.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Sharptooth, who they thought had died, actually didn't, and is like chasing them. They do manage to kill him, and they think that Petrie died while they were killing the Sharptooth, but he didn't. He survived, and like they all love each other and they help each other, and it's beautiful. And at the last minute, they're about, like, Littlefoot's kind of ready to give up. And then he sees, like, a cloud that's sort of shaped like a long neck. And it's like, Mom, or whatever. And he, like, follows it. It turns into, like, wispy smoke. And he follows it, like, around through some caverns and around the bend. And there's the Great Valley. And in the Great Valley are the other dinosaur, like, in addition to his own grandma and grandpa, Littlefoot's grandma and grandpa, are the other dinosaur families, like all of them, like siblings and parents, and all of them are there waiting in this amazing Great Valley. And they live happily ever after.
Until the meteor.
I guess. Like, the thing is, like, at the beginning of the movie, you sort of think the meteor has already happened because shit's real bad and there's no food. And they're, like, in this great migration to try and find new food. So, anyway, I mean, that's what happened. There's a lot more. There are actual, like, episodes that I could relay, but, like, I don't feel like I need to.
Sure.
I mean, so, anyway, that's the plot. Look, it's only 16 minutes worth of recording, and I managed to get through the whole plot.
It is only a 66-minute movie.
I'm proud of myself. Don't diminish my accomplishment.
It's okay. It's all you. It's not Don Bluth. It's all you.
I'm just gotten so good at summarizing. Anyway, okay, so let me start with the grief piece, because that is the thing that I think is the core strength of this movie as storytelling. I think that we often underestimate children. Like, part of me wants to, like, have a whole conversation about what is children's media, what is appropriate for children's media. I think offline, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, you and I have talked about the ways in which, like, we consumed media that was made for adults that sort of taught us how to consume stories in ways that our kids didn't. And now we're needing to, like, help them figure out. I don't think we've talked about that on the show, but this movie, I think, is from an era where in some ways we actually expected more of our kids. And we, like, recognize that, like, they live through shitty stuff too. And so as a guide for how to deal with, maybe not how to deal with, that's the wrong phrase, but as a model for, like, how grief shows up, as a normalizing vehicle for how grief shows up, I think this movie is really beautiful in many ways. The way that that Littlefoot, like, is, like, curls up in her footprint as a way to try and stay near her. It's just really lovely. There's also a moment where he expresses a great deal of anger at her, like, right after she's died. He's like, it's her fault. She should have known better. It was a sharp tooth. And, like, a little dinosaur who's called Rooter, like an adult, it was like, oh, honey, it's not her fault. Once he realizes what has happened, like, it's just the circle of life. It's how it happens. And he doesn't say it sucks, but he says it's hard, but it's not her fault. As Mom was dying, she said, I'll always be with you, even if you can't see me. And that bears out. And so I think that in that sense, as, like, a model of thinking about the deceased, this feels really, like, powerful and useful for children. Like, those kids I babysat who are now grown-ass adults, like, I'm actually glad that they have that in the furniture of their minds for dealing with grief. That, like, Littlefoot's mother she never leaves. She dies in the first few minutes of the movie, but she never leaves. She never leaves him. And she continues to be there to comfort and guide as memory, spirit, like, however you want to, whatever metaphor you want to use for that, she's there. And I think that feels like something I'm grateful for, that the kids who are consuming this now have in the furniture of their minds.
Well, I'm just thinking about how grown-ups so often want to shield children from hard things. And so we've mentioned our father passed away in 2013. My eldest was 2 when our dad died. And then 2 years later, we had 3 pets, and we lost 2 of them within 2 months of each other. We had our greyhound, Obi, and our cat, Charlie. Obi, we had to put down in August, and Charlie we had to put down in, I think, November. And so at that point, my eldest was 4, then 5. And because he remembered his grandfather and then the 2 pets, for the year that followed, he kept saying, well, if everyone dies and I'm the only one left, because he was thinking about our remaining pet, our cat, the dude. He was like, our 2 pets died and the dude was who was left. And that is something that happens in children's lives. They experience loss at a time when they don't have the experience or the emotional bandwidth to, or just the language to articulate what it is they're worried about. Because for him, it was the idea of being the only one left was what scared him. And so, like, this film, I think, could have been very helpful to him, because for him, it was like he really was focused on there was only one left. And that's where Littlefoot is. But he's not the only one left.
Right. Not only does he have his mom through the mechanism of memory and spirit, like he also makes a lot of friends who become his found family. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's also the case that I think in children's media, in terms of that shielding, there's like, I mean, dead parents are all over children's media. But usually it's sort of like we then distract. It's like one moment of sad and then we move on. That's another thing that I feel like this movie got right. Because the reality is that you don't move on. You don't get over it. You just get on with your life eventually. You do eventually get out of the footprint and start walking toward the Great Valley, but like you're still thinking about the deceased all the time. You carry it with you. Yeah. You know, like the grief. Exactly. And I think a lot of media for children that does include death doesn't recognize that. And so that felt, I don't know, I'm really like pleased and glad to be able to like share that with you. The other thing that I think the movie makers were trying to do intentionally, because that feels intentional to me, that way of addressing grief feels really intentional to me. The other thing that I think they did intentionally that I don't think they did as successfully is this attempt to kind of like counter discrimination. Like we have these grown-ups saying we keep to our own kind, and then the kids make friends anyway. And then in the Great Valley, we learn at the very end that like they all work together and they were a community and their kids, and for generations to come, they were, they continue to not have those rules. Right. The thing that feels off is that race is made up, but dinosaur species difference is not. And so that feels like a little off. And also, even within the universe of this film, there's still two types of dinosaurs, plant eaters and meat eaters. There's the good kind of dinosaurs who we can be friends with. They're the plant eaters. But then there's the bad kind who we have to try and kill. So like even within the universe of the movie, okay, let's put aside the fact that race is made up and the different species are real. Like you still didn't quite get there because you made the dinosaurs into like the terrifying sharp tooth. Who knows if he even has a consciousness? He never speaks. He only growls and snarls and like bites people. And then we have the plant eaters who, aside from Spike, are completely anthropomorphized and speak.
Are all of the voice actors white?
I don't know. I didn't look into that. I mean, just from the way that they sound, maybe? I don't know. There's no one whose voice is like coded as like American Black, but each of them has these like verbal tics. Not tics is the tics is the wrong word. Like idiosyncrasies is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So Petrie has the I flies. It sounds like English with an accent. Ducky has the yep, 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 and nope, 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 and whatever. Littlefoot is just a kid, probably a white kid. Sarah is tough and proud and like always right. She's kind of a jerk, actually. But I don't know. I didn't do that research. But anyway, I appreciate the effort, I guess is what I'm going to say.
It's the well-meaning white person attempt.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and for 1988, I guess it was an important step in the right direction. But it did not hold up as successfully as the work around grief.
I was teaching. I taught To Kill a Mockingbird every year, and this was part of the curriculum. It was a story that we had passed out beforehand, that it was about like the prejudice against the green-haired people. And, you know, how I don't want my kids learning next to the green-haired kids and like how it just passes on. And I taught it every year because it was part of the curriculum, but it was the same kind of well-meaning white people wrote it. And it was the same kind of like this doesn't actually say or do or mean anything. So it reminds me of that kind of thing. And I bet it was written about the same time, even though I was teaching in 2006 through 10.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let me move on to this is a thing that I don't know if it matters or not, but if you Google Land Before Time movie analysis, which is part of how I do my research, here's a behind the scenes, folks. That's how I do it. I just Google. But if you do that Google, what you'll get, in addition to a lot of people who just love the movie, is dinosaur nerds who have a bone to pick with this movie. Because like dinosaur nerd kids grow up to be dinosaur nerd adults. I think they just know to read the room a little bit better. And that's why we don't hear about it quite so much. But apparently the species that interact lived like millions of years apart, like totally different eras. Like one person said, we are closer to T-Rex than T-Rex is to the Littlefoot Apatosaurus species. So does that matter?
You know, I don't know. Since you mentioned that before we hit record, I've been thinking about that because it's an animated film with talking dinosaurs. So, no, it doesn't matter. Fuck that. Right. On the other hand, when we're like, and like the thing is like dinosaurs are a thing that we care deeply about, that we know very little about on the whole, honestly. Like in our lifetime, our understanding of dinosaurs has changed greatly. And something that blew my mind when I first learned it was that dinosaurs had not been discovered as of the founding of America. So like George Washington did not know that dinosaurs existed, which like, whoa, weird, which is so cool to me. So there's a part of me, because like, I think I take scientific discovery seriously in some ways. And I'm like, well, we should be making sure that kids are. But on the other hand, this is how we introduce them to dinosaurs.
Yeah, I am torn as you are, because like on the one hand, I'm like, who cares?
Yeah,
it's a movie about talking dinosaurs. Like it's not scientifically accurate.
Bears, I wouldn't care.
On the other hand, like when I think about some of the like very early movies, like early movies that had like cavemen and dinosaurs interacting, I'm like,
yeah.
No. So what's different, Trace? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because the early movies, the black and white films, like involved humans, but I don't know. For some reason, like that really offends me. And like the dinosaurs who are from totally different eras, I'm like, whatever. They're talking. Who cares? I don't know. Like I see the hypocrisy and the inconsistency in that.
Well, and it's it's a meditation on grief that's different from dinosaurs and cavemen just duking it out.
True. That's true. That's true. Now, some of the dinosaur nerds, some of the good things they have to say is that the ways in which dinosaurs were social creatures, like that they moved in herds, is sort of accurate, and it's nice for us to recognize, though they were not attentive mothers, probably, in the way that the movie depicts. And the dinosaur nerds also appreciate that the movie really conveys like how dangerous it was just to hatch. And that was like a thing that like that's why they laid so many, because it was so like dangerous in early childhood. Exactly. So scientific veracity matters, doesn't matter. I think that we're like kind of, sort of, but maybe not. Okay. So I'm moving on. I want to talk about the storytelling and sort of underestimating kids. Like we've talked about it tangentially regarding grief. There is a voiceover, like a narrator, who comes at the beginning and lets us know what's happening and tells us the thing about the two different kinds of dinosaurs and whatever. And then at the end, they make it to the Great Valley and we hear sort of the epilogue from the narrator. And I'm cool with that. That makes sense. It's part of the medium and like, I dig it. It's like there's a convention that's a thing that we do. The narrator, though, makes an appearance, or not, because I don't see them. So like metaphorical appearance in the middle of the movie multiple times, including one moment where like Littlefoot and Sarah kind of argue a lot. They are like butt heads as to like who's the leader of this little band, and they disagree about which way to go. Sarah wants to go to the easy way. Littlefoot is pretty sure this hard way is the right way. And they split up, and then Littlefoot was right. And so we see a scene of Sarah kind of curled up by herself and like looking real sad. And the narrator, the voiceover comes over and says, Sarah was still too proud to admit that she had been wrong. And I'm watching it, I'm going like, the fuck? Why did you just need to tell me that? I can see it. And also, what's the very first thing that any creative writing teacher tells you? Show, don't tell. Like, you were showing me. You didn't need to tell me. And I know this movie was made for kids, but kids are not stupid. They're just kids. And so that was a piece that I was like, what you doing here, Don? You know, like, this was a Steven Spielberg, George Lucas produced film. Like, with those storytellers in the room, who thought it was a good idea to record that voiceover? And I don't know. I didn't do the research. Maybe in early tests, people were like, what's wrong with Sarah? And they felt that they needed to. I don't know.
Did her dog just die?
I didn't do the research.
Did she get a bad grade on her math test?
As a viewer... But as a viewer in 2025, I'm watching it going, yeah, duh. It's like, you didn't need to say that. So that was like a little piece that like I think it's just a small piece about this one movie, but I think it also sort of speaks to just in general, like what we expect of our audience as storytellers, and sort of, especially if that audience is children. So it was just like a little moment that made me think about that. And on that same score, these little guys have plot armor. And I think that's appropriate for children, right? There's a scene when they are defeating the T-Rex where Petrie kind of goes over the edge of the cliff, and the dinosaurs are pretty sure he's dead, like his friends. And then they're going off and they're like all crying because they think Petrie is dead. And Petrie climbs up onto the cliff that they think he has perished from. And he goes, "You're leaving without Petrie?" And like everybody's super excited and whatever. So great. I'm glad Petrie had plot armor. This was for children. I think if it was made for adults, Petrie probably should have died, but it wasn't. But the thing that bothers me is this happily ever after that we get, this happy ending that we get. And like, I made a joke, like it's disingenuous that it's about dinosaurs, but that's kind of a joke, right? What really does bother me, though, they made clear how arduous this journey was, like how far and how hard, and there's not enough food. And yet, when these little guys, who are all children, like finally make it, 100% of their families who we didn't actually see die on screen are there. And this is one of those things that feels like it's underestimating children and feels like it's like protecting them in ways that actually are causing harm. I immediately thought of this episode of Sophia the First that I watched with my daughter when she was appropriately aged for Sophia the First.
Where a little background of what that, I've seen an episode or two of it, but I don't know it that well.
It's a Disney TV show about a girl whose mom marries the king. And so she becomes the stepdaughter to the king. So she goes from being like just a village girl to being a princess overnight. And so it's like it's a preschooler TV show that Disney's making right now. Or not right now. My daughter's 13. So in the past 20 years, they were making it. They may still be making it. I actually don't know. Sophia lives in a kingdom where magic is real. I mean, it's a Disney property. So there's one episode of Sophia the First where Sophia meets this flying horse who's like kind of a couch potato, but also wants to enter in this competition. It's like a race. It's like a chariot race with flying horses. And Sophia wants to enter it too. And so they like train together and they do the race and they win. I'm sorry, no. Like, that's not the lesson I wanted my 4-year-old to get, right? Like I'm glad they trained and had fun. But like, I actually wanted them to lose. Maybe even come in dead last and still think it will have been worth it because they made friends with one another, the horse talks, and because they had fun training and because now they have this new skill and next year they'll do better. But like, they won. And that's kind of what this Great Valley with all of their family being there felt like. It felt like not just like unrealistic in the story, but also giving unrealistic expectations to the kids. Like, I think it's fine to be like, stay the course, follow your mother's dead spirit, and good things will happen.
But not unicorns and rainbows and sparkles and everything is wonderful. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Like, maybe some of their families were there. Maybe like even 60% of them. But the fact that it's like this perfect place, like the rest of the earth is like fire and brimstone. But this one valley, this mythical valley that actually exists, is all lush and green and beautiful. And do the sharp tooths not know where it is? So there's part of it's like the realism of the movie that like I cannot suspend my disbelief enough. But part of it is actually also the pedagogical component of it. What are we teaching these 5 and 6-year-olds to expect from life? And I don't want to kill people's dreams. That's not what I'm suggesting. But like it does feel like there's an opportunity to sort of also be grateful for what we do have.
Well, the way you're describing this, it kind of reminds me of my antipathy towards the last book in the Chronicles of Narnia, which is analogous kind of to the rapture, I guess. I don't know. I don't really, because I don't know the Christian scripture. But in the last battle, what happens is all of the Pevensey kids and other humans we've seen go to Narnia, which is coded for heaven, end up in Narnia for the last battle. But it's real heaven now, except for Susan, because it's because they were in a train crash. Because they were all on their way because there was this horrible battle going on in Narnia. And so they're all on their way to try to help in Narnia, except for Susan, because she stopped believing in Narnia because she's interested in nylons and boys and lipstick.
Oh,
yeah. So like, how dare she care about things that people care about? And because of that, and then not only all the people who've gone to Narnia, but the Pevensey's parents too, Pevensey kids' parents too. So Susan loses in one fell swoop her entire family and her like family friends, who all die in this train crash, and they all go to heaven. And then in heaven, it's Narnia but better, and further up and further in. And it's like the grass is greener and the sky is bluer and everything is better. And it's a description of heaven that in a way feels too good. And also, it reminds me of at the beginning of the show, The Good Place, and like, what about all the people who didn't make it? Don't worry about it. Don't think about them. And that it's that same sort of thing where it's like, if it's so good, why isn't Susan here? If it's so good, why isn't Littlefoot's mother here? If everything's so perfect, how do we keep the sharp teeth out? We have to, joy is not sustainable like that. There's something in there, like, it's not a lesson we want to teach our kids that. Yeah.
It becomes an either or. I think you just said it, because in this movie, The Great Valley becomes an either or. It's an all or nothing. And that's just not how life works.
And I want to adopt Susan and have her become like a social media influencer for makeup. Like, I have this, I have like fan fiction. Yeah.
That I want to write for her. Yeah. So 2 more points that I want to make briefly. One is about animation. So I named that this was a moment when like the field itself, like from the highs of Snow White when Walt first envisioned a feature-length film, and it was a masterpiece, like a million masterpieces in each cell, to sort of much like sort of lazier style by the 80s. This film was an attempt to return to beautiful hand-drawn animation, and the backdrops are absolutely gorgeous. And the dinosaurs are adorable, and it's really fun to watch them, the way that they move. There's one moment where Littlefoot is riding on his mother's back, and he says, "Have you ever been to the Great Valley?" And she turns around to look at him. It takes a really long time for that big head to come around all the way to where he is, which is delightful. So I think in many ways, like, they accomplished that. I think that's why it's so short, because it was like it was hand-drawn animation. at the same time, as it started, and I don't know if there's something in the like translation from film to video to now digital that loses integrity, but it's like fuzzy as I'm watching it streaming, at least in the beginning, in ways that like I found distracting. And I suspect it is because of that translation from film to video to digital streaming. But there's something distracting about it in the way that we receive it now, which is unfortunate. And it's interesting too, watching it with 21st century eyes and what we've come to expect from our animation. There is a crispness that we get with Toy Story and the Pixar films that's just not there from hand-drawn, which is part of hand-drawn's, well, it's part of its charm. But because we've become so acculturated and accustomed to watching that born digital animation, there's something like, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance and disappointment, which is unfortunate that I found in myself. Like from the moment it started, I was like, oh, it's kind of fuzzy.
I may be misremembering, but I kind of remember there being like water droplets.
Yeah, the initial credits are over like an underwater scene with like bubbles.
And like water droplets on the leaf or something.
There's one moment when he remembers his mom where the water droplets come from the 5 points and gather into a little house.
And I remember that being just
That's
absolutely lovely. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
So, and the skill to make the water look like water. Yeah.
Like water.
Yeah.
And move and all those things. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the last thing I wanted to name before I wrap us up or you add any additional things is the sort of the notion of found family. Like, I think this is a thing that we see over and over again. It's a trope.
Well, it's
but
one I feel like our dad really liked.
Definitely. And I think the reason that we keep making these movies is because it's really appealing to us, especially Americans, especially like sort of post whatever Bowling Alone, like that phenomenon that guy named, where as advertising and housing pushed us into these like much smaller family units of just the nuclear family, that often families of origin aren't super like fun or comfortable, right? And so I think there's a reason that we as a culture are so drawn to these found family stories. Something I found interesting about this found family, like we have these tropes of the two would-be leaders at loggerheads and like the super anxious Petrie and the possibly neurodivergent Spike, who is almost like a mascot for them. And then the cheerful, but actually also very sad and lonely Ducky. There are like tropes here where we can recognize ourselves in one of them. And we see them sort of like there's a moment where, again, Sarah's super stubborn and thinks she can do everything on her own. And so they do find some leaves that are like hard to get. And so the other four are like climbing on top of each other to try and get to the top because Petrie won't fly, remember? And she says, they get a whole bunch of leaves down. And they say, Sarah, come eat. And she's like, I don't need your help. I don't need anything. She starts like hitting her head against the base of a tree to try and get to shake leaves down. She does it like two times and nothing happens. And on the third time, as she goes to hit the tree, Littlefoot like drops some leaves around her. She doesn't see him do it. She thinks they're leaves that she brought down. Yeah. And she eats them. She says, see, I don't need you. And like he kind of shakes his head. But that like seeing those kind of interactions and like people taking care of each other. And then Sarah comes around eventually and like, it's because they save her life. And like, really? That's what it took, Sarah? That's why I say she's kind of a jerk. Like they save her life from the sharp tooth. But by the end, like she actually, when they find the Great Valley, she says, Littlefoot, you did it. Whereas previously at every step of the way, I did that. Right. So we see sort of her embrace the found family and like that sort of coming around, like, again, like, we love that as a culture. And I don't know, like, I wonder if that is one of those sorts of narrative patterns like Beauty and the Beast that is maybe doing us a disservice, where we're putting up with like bad behavior from our friends because we think that eventually they're going to like come around and be the friend we want them to be. Like, I wonder if all of these found family, which I totally get why we want them, but if they like, again, like create furniture of the mind that makes for unhealthy dynamics in the real world.
See, it's interesting because I feel like part of the reason why we like the found family trope is, and I feel like part of the reason our father liked it is because it felt like he needed found family because his family of origin didn't necessarily provide him the support he needed.
Totally. That's what I agree.
So,
I completely agree.
So there's this like healthy and powerful underpinning of, okay, you're going to find your family because your family of origin doesn't necessarily have your back. And then, I don't know. Yeah.
I think what I'm saying is that these like movies with the trope with the sort of reluctant member, the reluctant member, I'm saying that maybe makes it so that we don't actually recognize them when we think that someone is a part of that found family who's going to give us support when they are not. That's what I'm suggesting. I completely agree with you. I think many people want and need found family because families of origin don't get them or don't support them or don't whatever, don't exist anymore. There are so many reasons. Even just aren't enough. Maybe they're wonderful, but they're just not.
Yeah.
So like I completely agree the need. It's these versions of it where it's the enemies to friends that makes me think actually like maybe that person isn't actually going to be your friend and you should not try to pursue them.
Yeah, it's the
That's
distance
what
or
I'm
pursuer dynamic. Yeah.
Yes, that we see it in romantic pairings, but we also see it in these found family friend pairings. That I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure that actually is doing us a service, especially the people who need found family because their family of origin was not supportive.
On the other side of it, though, for the people who are watching and see themselves in Sarah.
Yes, that's
because I'm sure there are plenty of kids who are just like, I don't need anyone and I'm too proud to say I'm wrong, who need an example of what it's
what it looks like to come around. Yeah, that's fair.
And like in kids' movies.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I wish she had come around for something lesser than having her life saved, but
fair.
I'll buy that. All right. Let me see if I can. I'm actually really delighted that I had this much to talk about because I finished watching the movie. I was like, oh, crap, there's not that much here. So let me see if I can remember what I said and what you teased out for me. So I started this at what I think is the movie's like core offering and the thing that it does the best. And that is it's the way that it addresses grief. The realistic way that it shows that grief is not a thing that you just leave behind with the deceased, but that you carry it with you. And the sort of gift of reminding kids that the lost one, the deceased, is still with you in your heart, in your memory, and maybe in some supernatural way, which it doesn't matter what you actually believe. I think the idea that they can have an active presence in your life even after they are no longer living is a beautiful one that I'm glad that kids have. And also the normalizing of the fact that grief sticks around, that you don't just get over it. That feels also really important for the children who watched this in the late 80s and beyond. The thing that the movie makers tried to do that I don't think holds up as well is their attempt to kind of push back against discrimination, which they meant well. It's not terrible, but it also like the difference between racism and sort of the species who kept to their own kind is that race is totally made up. Racism is very real. The different species of dinosaur are actually different species who lived, who like, that's the other thing, who lived multiple millions of years.
So that's correct.
And
three horns do not play with long necks because they don't live at the same time.
Because they don't exist at the same time.
That is an accurate statement from Sarah's dad.
It's not discrimination. It's not discrimination. It's scientific veracity. That's right. So the other thing, though, even within the universe of this movie, is that there's still an us and them with the herbivores and the carnivores, which, I mean, fair. I don't expect prey to be friends with predators, but then maybe that's not the vehicle to talk about discrimination. Okay, so on the scientific veracity of it, I think we both had sort of a complicated reaction to it. Like, on the one hand, they're talking dinosaurs. Duh, it's not scientifically accurate. On the other hand, why do we need to have these different species? And also, this is like the kids who grew up with this and love dinosaurs as a result are going to be super disappointed when they learn there's no way Sarah and Littlefoot could have been friends, right? And I'm going to say it again, and I still see how hypocritical and inconsistent it is. I hate those old movies from the early 20th century with the pitted cavemen against dinosaurs. The humans did not exist at the same time as dinosaurs. No. Your point that trying to tell a story about found family and grief is very different than who would win in a cage match. So maybe that is ultimately why I feel differently about the two. I don't know. I'm going to have to think on that. We also talked about, when we're talking about what we're teaching kids, there's something about the sort of too perfect happy ending that feels not just unrealistic. It's not just about suspending disbelief. It's also about the either-orness of it that feels like a disservice to kids. And we brought in some other pieces of media to kind of compare and contrast. I brought in Sophia the First, which is another kids movie. You brought in the Chronicles of Narnia and the final example where poor Susan is the only one who doesn't die in a horrible train wreck and get to go to heaven. But it's okay. It's not okay. But her last laugh is that she gets to be a rich and famous influencer, cosmetics influencer in the fan fiction that Emily Guy Birken will one day write. We ended our conversation talking a lot about found family and the reason that people, especially today, are so drawn to such stories. And we talked about how the danger in sort of the, what did you call it? Distance or pursuer dynamic that maybe is giving people not so great models for being friends with folks who they maybe should just leave alone. On the other hand, you pointed out some of them are the stubborn kids like Sarah who need to see a model for coming around. I still wish it were for something lesser than having her life saved. And then finally, in terms of thinking about not underestimating kids, I balked at the narrator making a metaphorical appearance in the middle of the movie to say things that I was watching. I did not need the explanation.
I got it.
Yeah, I got this. Duh. So that's what I have from the 66-minute movie. Thank you for going on this little trip with me. We will come back to An American Tale, I promise. What are you going to bring me next week?
I am going to bring you a movie I love to hate, Love Actually, just in time for Christmas.
Oh,
yes.
For Christmas.
Alrighty.
I look forward to it. This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes.
Thank you to Resonate Recordings for editing today's episode.
Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?